So we are recording.
Lo va a grabar y la grabación por ahí de las manos.
Oh, we know that we are recording.
Ahorita sí lo va a grabar y nos va a hacer llegar.
Yeah, also start. Should be recording.
Okay, right here.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So, okay, we're gonna start the class. Okay, hello everyone. I'm gonna start a class today. But first of all, let me go through the people that we have here in the classroom. Okay. We have Alejandra, Francisco Javier, Andrew, no, Elias, Gilberto, okay, Rafael, Flavio, okay, Abril, and Evelyn. And we have, you are even lost him? Okay, great. Okay, so we are missing a few guys. And also we have Alexis here. Okay. Okay, great. Let's gonna go through to our class for today. So it's gonna be an introduction to renewable energy. So basically, we are gonna go through. Okay, this is what we are gonna discuss today. We are gonna go through a background about energy systems, the history of the energy system in the Earth, our human energy needs, energy uses and sources, transportation as an energy sector, and also a review of technologies and the impact of each of those energies that we use currently in our world, okay? Then we are gonna have a group discussion about some topics. I'm gonna try to clarify any questions about the term project that you have to do. And I'm gonna explain about the homework that is due next week, okay? Through the presentation is gonna be a couple of videos that we are gonna see, gonna hear, and a discussion about those videos as well, okay? So what is energy? So the first thing, you know, that we have to talk about is, we are talking about energy, so it's good to know what is energy, you know? And in a plain word, we can say that energy is defined as the ability to do work. So basically it's related to machines. Machines convert energy to work, basically. That's kind of plain, you know, the way to say what is energy. But also energy is a fundamental entity, whose ability in flow and required for all of the phenomena, natural or artificial. So when we talk about phenomenon in energy, we can have different kind of forms on those energy. So you see, you know, here in my presentation, we can have energy as a thermal energy. So when we heat up any kind of food, so we transfer, you know, the heat from the highest heat to the lowest heat. When we melt in ice cream, that's another example about thermal energy. When we move, that's something that we call mechanical energy or kinematic energy, because it's moving energy. Nuclear energy is something that also we refer, you know, as one of the forms of energy. Chemical energy, electromagnetic energy. But also we can see that in order to understand energy, we have to have fundamentals on physics and chemistry, basically. So also we can have energy in two different ways. Kinetic energy, that's the energy of motion of a body, or also potential energy. And potential energy is the energy of an object's position, okay? So depending on the position, or is, you know, it is, or is moving, we can also differentiate about the different kind of energies, okay? And also, there is an example in the bottom, just to explain better, about these kind of energies. When we talk about mechanical energy, it's the sum of kinetic and potential. So, for example, if you move the car up a mountain, it has kinetic and potential energy. So you can have both of them, the kinetic and potential. But you have a book sitting on a table, there is only potential energy working on, because the book is not moving, okay? So you can have both of them, at the same time. You are moving something and also is moving up or moving down too, all right? Let's see. Okay. So, but we live in a system. Anything that we do is part of a system, and energy is the same. So when we talk about energy systems, we talk about really different kind of networks, interconnected and interrelated on those. And we have sources, and also we have a source of energy in those ones. For example, this example that I'm showing you here is the example of a natural energy system. And we start with the sun. So the sun is the source of energy that we have here in the earth. But that sun, the energy, part of that energy can be used in the plants to convert that energy from the sun to other kind of energy through a process called photosynthesis. So in the plants, absorb energy and transform it through photosynthesis. But also the plants have some kind of impacts too. So the plants release CO2 in water and convert that energy into sugars as well. So that's what is a system. So the system has some inputs, some outputs, and some changes inside the system. Okay? So the plants store energy in the chemical bonds of sugars and starches. So that energy can be used by humans later on when we eat that food, okay? But also the humans can, not only the humans, we consume plants, but also animals and so on. And we transfer that energy source into the body. So that energy is in our body, and then we can, burn that energy during different kind of activities. So that energy is used to do work, and a significant fraction is not dissipated and is not available for harnessing in the future. So that was happening in this kind of system. So, and again, so a system is basically inputs, outputs, and in itself, there are some different kind of mechanisms to transfer that energy, okay? See? So basically, on our Earth system, the sun is pretty much, that source of energy, that we must use, that originates most of the energy in our Earth. But for many years, we have been using a lot of fossil fuels, like coal, air, oil, and gases that have been transformed for plants and animals for over millions of years as the main source of energy, basically. So we are not using the sun as the main kind of energy. Rather than that, we are using fossil fuels to do that, to use the energy. But these kind of sources are not renewable energy, because in order to convert that oil and gases, it happens over millions of years to happen, So that's what is not renewable energy. And if we can see this graph here on the left side, is, on the x-axis, we have the years from thousands of years, over 5,000 of years in the future, and the amount of energy and the kind of energy we are using. And we are seeing, that over 100 years is the one that we are using most of the energy, okay? So there is this isolated peak here, that shows us how much energy we are using. On the right side of this slide, you can see, the years from 1900s all the way to 2100s is the amount of energy and the kind of energy that we use and that we are thinking that we are going to use later on. So the blue line is basically the oil, the red line is the coal, and the yellow one is the gas. Okay, so we are seeing, that we are getting to the peak of using all those fossil energy resources, basically, in the in our current time, basically, and we are going to continue to use those, for the next decade. That's what the trends show us to do, that we are going to use the conventional fossil fuels. So let's gonna go through different about how humans have been using this energy and how efficient we are using this kind of energy. So efficiency is one of the things, that it has to be discussed in this class in order to understand energy. So on the left side of this graph, we can see the calories of energy subsidized for 1 calorie of food output. So on the y-axis goes through 0.02 calories all the way to 20. So basically, the ones below 1, so you use less than 1 calorie to yield 1 calorie of food, that's really a good and efficient system, okay? But these ones, as I pointed out here, are low intensity farming operations. For example, on the corn, on this kind of corn is low intensity, like we can see small farmers, okay? Farmers that they don't use machines, maybe it's pretty much everything is by hand, okay? So it's low intensity, small, nothing related to what we have nowadays, especially here in the Imperial Valley or even in Mexicali, that farming is so intensive. So those units of farming, are so large, they use a lot of mechanization and so on. There is a lot of energy input on it in order to create calories of energy too. So that's so different. So if you are in a low intensive system, you are really efficient on using calories because you don't have to spend so many calories in order to create 1 calorie of food, okay? That's what is, I'm showing in this graph here. So, for example, nowadays, we have a lot of feedlots, cattle systems, like we have here in Imperial County, and also we have over Mexicali. So there is a concentration of, a small place with a heavily concentrated cattle facility. But there, nowadays, those feedlots, we may use 10 to 15 calories of energy in order to produce 1 calorie worth of beef from those places, okay? In order to understand better this, that calories, so calories is a unit for energy, okay? It may be kind of difficult to understand that we have to invest 10 calories in order to produce 1 calorie of food. But those 10 or 15 calories, for example, in the feedlots, are not only the ones that we use in order to feed the beef, to keep the beef. It's not only that. You see the picture, on the right thing, is the energy per year in BTUs, and it say that the energy flow in the U.S. food system. So so we have to consume 10 calories of BTUs, in this case, in order to produce about 1 BTUs. But in this spread out of thing that I have to use in order to create one BTU of calories, agriculture maybe is the 21%. Transportation accounts for 13% of those 10 BTUs. Processing industry, packing, food retail, commercial food services, and household storage, okay? So in order to have that 1 calorie worth of beef, I may have to spend 10 or 15, but not only at the feedlot itself, but in the whole food chain, okay? From keeping the cows or the cattle all the way to the house. So there is a change of food, that also we spend energy on it. So that's what today's system is so complex, and there is a lot of energy passing through the different food chain, rather that it happens, when we only were maybe 1 million inhabitants in the world, okay? Because nowadays we have 7 billion of people, living here. So there is a spread out, people living, and we have different systems, that we have to have some energy in order to get some energy out, okay? So another way to analyze this graph, on the left, is to show you how has been the U.S. food system, through the years. How has been the efficiency? So if we see here, in 1910, we pretty much, the food system has 1 calorie input and yield 1 calorie out. But nowadays, well, this graph ends in 1970s, we have to have 10 calories in order to get 1 calorie out worth of food, that calorie, okay? It's because the system has changed so much, as I explained before. Nowadays, we have so many people, the system is even larger, it's concentrated, it's heavily mechanized, okay? We have to input, you have to have more energy in order to get 1 calorie worth of food, okay? Any questions on that? All right. So another way to talk about energy systems is about population. And we know that we have been increasing that population in the earth, all over the years. So in the graph on the left, you can see the energy consumption and also the population in billions. So the energy consumption is in blue line, and the population in billions growth is in a red line. So both of those curves are matching perfectly. So meaning, that there is more consumed as we have more people in Earth. That's pretty much obvious, for all of us that we are in college, that we can see that trend. But that's not the only way to analyze these kind of energy systems. So we have to put more beef on this in order to, to have a better sense of what's going on with the energy systems in the Earth. So other way, to analyze this is, it's going to use the per capita energy consumption as a function of gross domestic product. So on the graph on the right, you can see the per capita energy consumption, that is gigajoules per person, versus the per capita GDP. So we can see on this that the developing countries like US, maybe Iceland, are on the top right of this graph over here. Mexico is kind of in the middle in that way, okay? So we can have a better perspective, like Icelanders use about 700 gigajoules per person. So why those guys over there, they use a lot of energy? So one thing is because they live in, under conditions that they use a lot of heat, because their winters are pretty long winters. So they have to use a lot of energy in order to heat up their households, basically, okay? So that makes sense, okay? But on the other part, so when you chop a graph, it may explain a lot of things, but basically you have to understand what is behind of that graph. So that's what when you talk about the Icelander, they use a lot of energy for gross produce, domestic product, because they live in the northern areas of the earth, because they use a lot of heat in order to heat up their households, but also because they have abundant geothermal energy, okay? So basically they have the power, so that energy is cheap. But if you use that same amount of energy in other places, it may cost more money. Another example is like in France. In France, 1 gallon of gas is about $7. But here in Imperial County is $3.4 per gallon. So you have to have more money in order to have the same amount of gallon, in order to produce that energy. depending on what part of the earth are you living, okay? So those kind of things, you know, related to not only that we have more people here, so we have more energy consumed by those people because we are more nowadays, pretty close to 7 billion people here, but also what is our economies? So we have to put in perspective, you know, the economies of our countries too, in order to think, okay, how we are using our energy. What is the source of our energy? Do we have any kind of sources that are cheap here? That the cost is low compared to other places where the cost is higher and maybe it's not abundant than here. So all those kind of relationships, you know, are so important to understand and to discuss. So let's gonna get to some of the history of energy. So in the past, so basically, pretty much, you know, all the energy, all the power was given by either by humans or animals, you know. The society was using a lot of biomass for the energy, basically. So when the humans discovered, you know, fire, they used pretty much wood, those kind of things, you know, available. So, and for all over, for many years and still nowadays, we use wood as one of the energy sources that we have. And some related to wood, like coal and other things. What else we can see here? So it was not only, you know, the power of fire that was discovered back in the time, but also how the water was so influential, you know, to provide energy too. So hydropower and so on was, you know, discovered many years ago as well. So those are renewable energy, you know, the hydropower and so on. So that's kind of the background on the history about energy. Solar energy is nothing new. So in the past, people have been using solar energy too. Not in the scale that we are using today, absolutely. But it was some examples, you know, that show you that. For example, this Swiss scientist, Horace, he built a box covered with layers of glass that had black core in them to absorb the light. And he recorded temperatures about 100 Celsius inside. So he understood that light pass through the glass and you have a black thing on inside, you can absorb that energy and keep up the heat on it. Okay? So that's back in the 1970s, you know, that they discovered that kind of things. So it's nothing new. It's nothing new that, you know, that we use sun as a measures of energy. But one of the things that it was not well understood in the past were the physics and the chemistry behind of this, as I said before. So energy is about physics and chemistry. But it was not until late 1800s that we have scientists figuring out all these phenomena of energy. All the basics about physics and chemistry that we call thermodynamics were figured out late in the 1800s only. So before that, there were maybe experiments like this, empirical experiments, you know, try to figure out what's going on with that. But the foundations of those things were later figured out by scientists late in 1800s. So having a robust understanding of how is energy and how it changed through the different materials, it was key in order to have a better understanding of the things and how to move forward energy resources. Okay?
Okay.
What else? So in the 1840s, we have James Joule did a long series of experiments that showed that heat is a form of energy. So even that, you know, try to relate what is going on in the environment. It took many years to do that. And pretty much, you know, the previous experiments were empirical experiments. So this box is an empirical experiment to see what is going on there. But that's the way that we learn to humans, by doing experiments. That's what is so meaningful to do experiments. But then we have the industrial revolutions from 1800s up to 1900s, more or less. And we have a bunch of scientists that, you know, all over the time I know about them because all of them were physicists or chemist guys and engineers as well, that developed the theory about motion from heat and so on. So they basically developed all the theory behind of energy. Then we have advances in mechanical and materials that make possible have railroads more efficient and a better way to move forward. So we have transportations, you know, that faster, that people can move faster and so on. So we can do other things that we couldn't do before. There were some attempts about having wind energy in the past as well, to move pumps, basically, water pumps in this case. Another result of the Industrial Revolution was an energy distribution infrastructure. So that's the other thing, is the infrastructure. And that's what happened these days. So you may think, with all the advances that we have, why we don't have more wind energy, solar energy? It's because we don't have the infrastructure in place, okay? So the infrastructure that we have today from fossil fuels, it took many years to be in place. That's the other thing. It's not only that we are not able to have that kind of energy. It's the network that we have to have. It's the distribution network that we have. The policy that we have to have too in place. And we don't have it yet, you know. As robust as we have it with those non-renewable energy sources that we have been having for many years. Okay? So back in the time, so we pretty much have the same energy that we used to have more than 100 years ago, but not at the scale that the fossil fuels we have it today. Okay? So the Industrial Revolution brings, you know, a lot of power. So mobility, a new way to do business as well, and a lot of energy was used in order to move forward the industry back in the time. So in this graph here on the top right is the energy consumption in the United States. So if we read close on this one, goes from 1700 all the way to the current time. And we have the BTUs on the y-axis. So on this line over here, we have wood. So wood is still, you know, is part of one of the energy resources. But the one, you know, that is moving so quickly up is coal. Natural gas is also moving from the 1900s as well. Petroleum from the 1900s as well is moving so up. Nuclear energy, maybe from the 1970s, is moving up. So there are more consumption of that energy. But renewable energy is, you know, it's just moving up, you know, to all the way to 5 BTUs in the United States nowadays. So those kind of renewable energy sources are not much in use these days. But still we have a lot of non-renewable energy that make up, you know, the most energy consumed, you know, in the United States. If we go, that's in the United States. If we talk about what is the world energy consumption, so we pretty much see the same trend. Natural gas is on the top, petroleum is top, natural gas, coal, and renewable energy is just one fraction. It will be maybe 20% of the whole thing that we have, or the whole mix that we have. So even today, a lot of non-renewable energy sources came out with the majority of the one that we consume. And here there is a good history, you know, how we have been moving forward other kind of energies, like nuclear energy. So all the background needed in order to have nuclear reactor plants were established back in 1940s, okay? And the United States has been, you know, using that energy back in the time as well. The same with solar energy. So in the 1950s, there was a lot of information and also technology developed in order to move forward solar energy. So as you can see, there is nothing new on those things, but still we are so behind of renewable energy sources that came out with a mix of energy, total energy, not only in the United States, but in the world as well. So let's gonna see what are our needs as a humans. What are our energy needs? So humans, we need shelter for residential or commercial buildings. In order to have shelters nowadays, or even in the back, we have some sort of energy in order to even to heat it up or to cool off those buildings. We need food. We need transportation. And there is a whole sector of industrial products, from chemicals and others, that we use in order to meet our needs as a humans. But these human needs are influenced by the level of economic activity, the population distribution, and the geographic locations. So maybe all of us, we have these needs. Those are basic needs. But depending on where we are located, how many people we are living in that place, even the economic development that we have, we are going to influence those needs. Even maybe we are going to have better food, or maybe more food. Maybe we are going to have better shelters. Maybe we are going to have bigger buildings, depending on where part of the world are you living. Okay? So what kind of sources and technology we use in order to meet those human needs? Well, it's the one that I explained before, all the non-renewable and renewable energy. For example, from biomass, wind, geothermal, and so on. So how this technology is more appealing for people in some areas of the world and not much appealing that people in other areas. So it's basically about the resources availability. So sometimes, geothermal is, we have more sources of geothermal here in Imperial Valley, but not much in other parts of the United States. It's the same with the wind as well. So we may have wind, all over the earth, but there are some areas that, there is more windy, there is more speed and so on. So that's pretty much the source that we can use for wind energy. Then is production, conversion, and distribution. Do we have that network to move up to the network that we have to have in order to connect the cities and within the cities and connect everyone's there, with energy? The energy usage and how that use is influenced by regulations and strategies for mitigation. So basically, another big influence on energy are the policies. If we have policies that promote renewable energy and then that support that promotion, well, we can speed up those renewable energy sectors rather than the non-renewable energy sectors. So it's a matter of not only to understand all the physics and chemistry of renewable energy, of energy as a whole, but also the policies, or the policies that are coming from us as human beings, that help us to move forward in using different kind of energies. And then, after all of this, there is always impacts. No matter what kind of energy you use, there is always an impact on that. There is pollution, and there are health risks. For example, pollution could be physical, like a thermal, noise, electromagnetic, okay? So, for example, the wind turbines, there is an issue, with the ecosystems around, because the noise, because It has issues with some birds as well. So all those kind of things, you know, any kind of energy is gonna have an impact, you know, in our lives as well. So let's gonna see in this slide, we can see how by regions we consume energy nowadays and towards the future. So we see here the developing country has been using a lot of energy in the past, and also is projected to move more energy in the future. So the industrialized region is moving as well, but you see in the graph on the left, on the top, just the green line is the developing countries, and the industrialized is the one on dark blue. So both of them are pretty much matching near in the future, in the 2020s, because the developing countries, we account for China and other countries, you know, they are using a lot of energy in order to speed up their processes, in order to feed their demands as well. So we will see a lot of demands, and that's what we are seeing these days, you know, from the developing country about energy. What else? So still, we understand a lot of fundamentals of energy. There are some things that we are still missing. So we still need more scientists, you know, working on these kind of energies, renewable energy and others, in order, you know, to have a better comprehensive understanding of all of these energies. Any questions so far? That's pretty much the background that, you know, is good to hear, to understand, you know, so far on energy. So let me show you this video about how it's made crude oil. Okay, it's only 5 minutes, and then we are going to have a discussion about it.
If you write anything on your computer, you need to get graphics.
I write pretty much all day, every day. Crude oil, also called petroleum, is an unprocessed oil found deep in the ground. It forms naturally from decomposed prehistoric plants and animals. The color can range from clear to black, the consistency from very watery to very thick, but it's always expensive when it hits the pumps. Oil companies who drill wells install pumping units to draw up the fluid that contains crude oil and salty water. In Central California, USA, has 6,000 producing wells.
We cannot see anything.
It can run 24 hours a day.
Can I see anything? Give me a second.
Here's what goes on inside the well. With each downstroke, the pumping unit pushes a steel rod.
Okay.
Maybe you send me the link and I open it here.
Oh,
Browser.
now you will. Let me get back. Now you can see it?
Crude oil.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Petroleum is an unprocessed oil found deep in the ground. It forms naturally from decomposed prehistoric plants and animals. The color can range from clear to black, the consistency from very watery to very thick, but it's always expensive when it hits the pumps. Oil companies who drill wells install pumping units to draw up the fluid that contains crude oil and salty water. This oil field in Central California, USA, has 6,000 producing wells. The pumping units can run 24 hours a day. Here's what goes on inside the well. With each downstroke, the pumping unit pushes a steel rod down the steel tube lining the well. With each upstroke, the rod rises, and the pressure difference between the fluid on the outside and the fluid on the inside opens a ball-shaped valve, blocking the bottom, letting the fluid flow up the tube. Another valve at the top releases the fluid out of the well. To drill a new well, workers first erect a drilling rig at the side, then hoist a giant pipe with a drill bit on the end. They feed this drill pipe through the center of a spinning disc called a rotary table. As the table turns, the drill pipe turns, its weight bearing down and boring a hole through the ground. Once the drill pipe descends its full 9-meter length, they connect another pipe. The process is repeated with subsequent drill pipes until they bore into the reservoir containing fluid. Throughout the drilling process, they pump a mud mixture down the drill pipe. It comes out the drill bit at the end, hits the bottom of the hole, then backs up to the top. This process brings back the drilled out rock. After lining the well with a steel tube to keep the walls from collapsing inward, they mount the pumping unit and install the valves we saw in the model. The pumping unit pushes the rod up and down through the wellhead at the surface. As a safety measure, workers take readings to check the air for any hazardous underground gases that may be exiting the well. Once they determine the area is safe, they draw a sample of fluid to test the well's water to oil ratio. The typical ratio is 90% water to 10% oil. The fluid from each well exits via a pipe, and the pipes from all the wells feed a main line, leading to a gas removal vessel. The fluid contains carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, and natural gas, which has to be extracted. They naturally rise to the top of the vessel and exit via a pipe which runs to the company's gas treatment plant. There, equipment removes and treats the hydrogen sulfide, transforming it into sulfur, which a local farm buys to use as fertilizer. The natural gas and carbon dioxide, meanwhile, are piped to another area, where they fuel the company's steam generator. The generator boils the water extracted from the fluid to produce steam. The company injects steam into the wells to heat the fluid, thinning it so that it flows faster. Once gasless, the fluid is piped to the treatment plant, which extracts the salty water. In this big tank, appropriately called a free water knockout, the separation of oil and water happens naturally, the oil floating to the top. To speed up that process, they add a chemical called an emulsion breaker. The extracted water exits via a pipe leading to the steam generator. The oil goes to a clarification tank, in which a chemical process filters out sand, which the fluid brought up from the reservoir. By the end, when the ratio is 98% oil to 2% water, the crude oil is ready to sell. Built-in meters give instantaneous water content readings. As an additional quality control measure, the company also draws samples for analysis in its own lab on site. In fact, they test throughout production to ensure sufficient water is being extracted at each phase of processing. Companies buy crude oil as a raw material for producing petrol, asphalt, plastics, crayons, perfume, and many other products. So there you go, yet another refined report from how it's made.
Okay. Okay. So, what do you think about that video? Here. Huh? What do you think about that video? Do you know before how to extract oil crude? So that industry has been amazing, you know. Not amazing. It's been many years in order to understand how to extract crude oil, you know. So it's a lot of chemistry, basically. You can watch in that video and hear there is a lot of chemistry behind of that. But there is a lot of impact of that kind of industry as well that in this video didn't touch about it. But not just hearing that when they extract oil, only 10% is oil and 90% is water, salty water. And then you have to get at the end of the process, 98% oil and 2% water on, you know. So having just only that ratio there is amazing, you know, how we can, as a human beings, have the power to extract things and change the nature of those things through a chemical process. And it took many years in order to understand that. Not only understanding that process, but also the policy and regulations in order to have that industry in place. Okay? Because one of the things is not cheap, that industry to have in place, but also the network required so that the industry can succeed. The market as well. The market. Because if you don't have a market, how is going to happen all these processes? So what is the meaning to produce oil if you don't have a market? That's right. And everything related to oil, not to oil, the industry that uses oil is a potential market, like a gasoline. So our cars, most of our cars are fueled by gasoline. Okay? So the market is already created for that particular non-renewable energy resource. Okay? But what about if you change the market? We change the market and promote other kind of energies with regulations and so on. We can have the same kind of technology advances toward the future as it was the oil industry. That's right. So it's all about us, of what we want to be, as how we see ourselves, you know, toward the future. Because things don't happen, you know, just so quickly. Suddenly, it happens because there is a support from the industry. There is a support from the government as well. There is a support from the people that use those things. Okay? But when you see these kind of videos, there are too many questions related to how we extract oil and what is the price of that oil. Not only how much you pay for that source of energy, but what is the impact on the environment. But the other thing, people that works in oil industry, their paychecks are really high. So it's an industry that pays really well. I remember back in Mississippi, some of my students ended up working with the oil industry. You know, their annual salaries for a fresh engineer starts in $70,000 per year, $70,000, $80,000 per year in that particular market. So it's huge reward that they have. So also they employ a lot of people as well, so on. So I don't want just to say, you know, that the oil companies, you know, are the bad things on this. Just go ahead. Yeah. There is a lot of risks. Yeah, on yeah, she's talking about the people that work on the offshore platforms. There are some in the Gulf of Mexico, and that is so risky. Yeah, that is so risky, not only for the humans but also for the environment. And that happened, you know, back in the time about five years ago with that explosion there. The impact, you know, having those offshores, you know, there. But yeah, so it's, yeah, how as a society we are going to be rewarded to do those kind of risky jobs. And that's the way that we want to keep moving forward, or we want to implement other kind of energies, you know. Do you have any other comments about this video? Pretty general, I guess, pretty informative, all right? Okay, so let's go back here to the presentation. So in this graph here, I'm showing the change in primary energy demands from 2016 through 2040. So you can see that there is a lot of demand coming up from South America and Central America, Africa. India is a huge player, and it's going to be a huge player in the future, again, and also China. Because the amount of people, that is living in those places is because also the amount of resources, that had not been explored in other parts of the world as well, okay? So basically the factors that affect energy use most are the level of industrialization, the climate of the region, and the population. So industrialization, climate, and the population are key factors that affect energy use. These factors are not independent, and all of these factors influence energy choices, production, distribution, and usage. The average use of energy per person in different countries varies widely. For example, in this table on the right is the world energy consumption for electricity generation by region and fuel. So from 1995 to 2020 in BTUs, quadrillions BTUs. So we have the industrialized region, we have the developing countries, and on the bottom we have the total world. So the industrialized region, you can see that oil has been used more, all over the years. Natural gas is one of the industries that is moving so faster than oil. Coal is kind of steady, moving up as well. Nuclear energy is kind of steady. Renewable energy is not much appealing, to moving forward, using this table here on the industrialized region. But if we go to the developing country, we can see similar trends on oil all over the years. Natural gas is coming from 4.0, almost 5 quadrillion BTUs in 1995. It's going to be 16 quadrillion BTUs in 2020. In the developing world, renewable energy is going to be the double from 10 quadrillion BTUs in 1995 to 20 quadrillion BTUs in 2020. So it's going to be kind of the double, but still it's going to be a small portion of the whole thing. And for example, about energy consumption shared by source in 2020, if we put together the total world, we have that oil is going to be shared by 10%. All the resources by natural gas are going to be come out with 26%. Coal is going to be almost 31%. Nuclear just 12%. And renewable energies is going to come out with only 20%. So the trends show us that towards the future, non-renewable energy is still the biggest player for energy. Okay? So let's gonna talk about transportation, because transportation is one of the major players on consuming energy in today's world. So for example, in this graph over here on the right is motor vehicle mileage, fuel consumption, and fuel economy. So the blue line on the top is gallons per vehicle, and the other kind of orange line is miles per gallon. And on the x-axis, we have time from 1950s all the way to 2010s. So we see that the miles per gallon has been increased. So there is a better efficiency, since 1980s currently. And the gallons per vehicle has been decreased on that because we have the efficiency of the vehicles have been increased in that respect. So we can see also the miles per vehicle has been increased, in the same period of time as well, So we have better efficiency, but still the way that we move vehicles today is so inefficient. For example, for every 20 gallons that we put in a car, we only get about 2 gallons worth of actual work. Okay? The rest dissipate as a heat. Okay? So it's so inefficient. So although over the time we can see some trends, that vehicles have been getting, better efficiencies, the whole thing of using gasoline on those vehicles is so inefficient. Okay? The other inherent inefficiency is in the fact that to move one person, we have to spend energy moving over a ton of extra material. Okay? So we have to move, we have to put energy on other things in order to move people around. Okay? So what we have these days is the developing countries, like the ones in Asia, they are moving up on energy consumption because they are seeing that that's the way, in order to have a better society, in order to have better ways, a better economy. So they are consuming a lot of energy. And in primary, this energy consumed by the developing world is all about non-renewable energy, basically. Okay? And as you are watching the video, the oil industry is not only about gas, it's also about other things related to the petrochemical industry, like plastics and so on. So it's the whole market, is made for that industry, basically. That's what it is. It's already set up, for that industry. Let's gonna see this video. It's a little longer, but I guess it's worth to see how to make petrol or gas from crude oil. Okay. So let's watch that.
We used to think that in the future we'd all be zooming around in flying cars that run on flowers and smiles. Well, this is the future, and oil is still the lifeblood of the modern world. The world's roads are packed with 800 million greedy vehicles, guzzling their way through 7 billion litres of petrol. Keeping the fuel lines flowing safely with this flammable liquid demands a potent mix of engineering brilliance, chemical wizardry, and mucky manual labour. So, how do they do it? Texas, USA. From the look of this hot, barren, windswept landscape, you'd be forgiven for assuming this area must be a rural backwater. But in fact, this is one of the richest spots in the world, because Texas is home to the American oil industry. They've been drilling for oil here since 1894. But it wasn't until 1901 that the oil boom really took off, when at a stroke, the Lucas Gusher tripled US oil production. Since then, almost 60 billion barrels have been pumped out from the Texan soil. And if the oil companies have got their sums right, there are reserves of another 10 billion barrels or so still to be extracted. The sticky, smelly black liquid they're after is crude oil, which is the raw material needed for making petrol. It was formed from the remains of tiny sea plants and animals during the Permian period. Thanks to the action of heat and pressure, 250 million years later, they've been transformed into one of the world's most vital energy sources.
This is black gold, Texas tea, the best there is. It smells like rotten eggs, but it also smells like money.
On this hot, sticky Texas morning, the crew of Derrick Rig 62 are setting to work sinking a new well. Every month, more than 1,000 new wells are drilled here in Texas, and together they pump out over 900,000 barrels of crude every day. To keep that oil flowing, producers like Occidental Petroleum will sink more than 100 wells a year. So for guys like Rick Baker, this hot, noisy, back-breaking work is very much just another day at the office.
What's the job cost, you know? Been doing this for 11 years. Take pride on our work. Like reading out here on this screen right here.
But the team face an arduous task, getting the oil out. In this area, known as the Permian Basin, the crude lies up to 2 miles down, trapped in rocks over 250 million years old. To reach it, they use the derrick's huge motors to grind a diamond-tipped drill bit deep into the earth. But all the friction creates huge amounts of heat, so high-pressure drilling fluid is pumped down a pipe to cool the cutting head. The fluid then carries the cuttings back to the surface, where they're left to settle out in mud pits. It's noisy, dangerous work. Rick needs to keep the pressure on the drill bit just right. Too little and it won't cut. Too much and it will fracture. What's more, he must constantly be on guard for the threat of gas releases, which could cause catastrophic explosions. As they drill, the team need to regularly attach new 9-meter lengths of drilling pipe using an enormous 5-ton automated wrench called an iron roughneck. With the drill head burrowing at around 5 meters an hour, this arduous task must be repeated every couple of hours, 24 hours a day. The drilling only intermittently halted to line the well. Eventually, if they're lucky, they strike oil. Initially, the pressure of the trapped oil forces it through small holes in the finished pipe and up to the surface. But this natural pressure doesn't last forever. So to keep the crude flowing, they use one of these. This is called a pumping jack, or nodding donkey. The circular motion of the powered flywheel is converted into vertical motion, and like an enormous metal syringe, it sucks the oil to the surface. Dotted across the empty plains, these quietly insistent nodding donkeys harvest the black gold of Texas. But these oil fields are many miles from where the crude oil is needed. So a series of pumps feed it to a pipeline and off on a 500-mile journey to the other side of the state. This extraordinary citadel of gleaming silver pipework is Baytown. Less than 30 miles from Houston, it looks like something out of Blade Runner, and is the single largest oil refinery in the whole of the US. With over 5,000 miles of metal piping spread across 2,400 acres, this place can refine 560,000 barrels of crude oil every day. Not only does it get incredibly hot here, the noise is so deafening, its 4,000 strong workforce get through over 1 million ear protectors every year. This place is so huge, as well as Texan crude oil, it also sucks in supplies from all around the world. To satisfy Baytown's thirst, vast 300-meter-long tankers arrive at the specially constructed docks. Over 20 of these massive vessels arrive every month, each one delivering up to 3 million barrels from their huge holds. As much oil as everywhere in Texas produces in 3.5 days. The thing about crude oil is it's crude. Even if you could get that stuff into your petrol tank and somehow set fire to it, it wouldn't provide the instant explosive power that internal combustion craves. To be honest, you'd be better off coating your driveway with it and driving with it. To become usable fuel, it has to be refined. So at the heart of the refinery lies the laboratory, headed by Joyce Bussey. It's up to Joyce's lab to supervise the process of turning the crude oil into usable products.
Crude oil in this state is not very useful at all. If you put this in your tank, you'd be sorry because it wouldn't go anywhere.
The trouble with crude oil is it contains a mix of hydrocarbons, each of which has a different number of carbon atoms. The hydrocarbons are different in weight. The lightest is propane, while the heaviest is used to make asphalt. Extracting petrol from this mix is a formidable challenge, and it requires one heck of a chemistry set to do it. The most important part of the plant is this. Like a moonshine still as tall as a cathedral, this is where the crude is separated. Heated to over 370 degrees Celsius, it's pumped into the base of the tower, and like steam from a kettle, the vapor rises. As it cools, the molecules condense, the heavy asphalt and tar at the bottom, while lighter molecules, including diesel, jet fuel and petrol, continue rising until they too condense and can be siphoned off. But the trouble with producing all this fuel is they now have an ocean of potentially explosive liquid to deal with. But of course, it's this explosive quality that makes petrol so useful. So to make sure it's as explosive as it should be, it's up to workers like Derek Smalley to carefully take samples for analysis in the lab. In all, every 159-litre barrel of crude produces 73 litres of petrol, 35 litres of diesel, around 20 litres of jet fuel and heavy fuel oil, almost 6 litres of propane, and another 34 litres of other products, such as butane, asphalt, and sulfur. Every day, this plant produces enough petrol to fuel a car on 770 round trips to the moon. Unless, of course, you drive a 4x4, in which case you may have to fill up halfway. Anyway, Derek delivers his samples to the lab for testing.
Our lab does the final product check of all product that goes out of the refinery. And if it doesn't meet our customer's expectation, it doesn't go out the gate.
The fuel is tested by feeding it to a petrol connoisseur, an aging but robust knock testing engine. Engine knocking happens when fuel spontaneously ignites as it's being compressed in the engine cylinder. The reason for this premature ignition is there's too much heptane and not enough octane in the mix. By increasing the percentage of octane, the mix can be improved until the knocking stops. The lab can then feed their data back into the main refinery to correct any mixing errors and ensure a perfect blend. With the refinery's work done, some of her 500,000 valves are opened, and the petrol flows through underground pipelines, which feed it to various local terminals like this one in South Houston. From here, it's transferred to huge tankers for delivery by drivers like Bradley Unruh. But filling up a tanker is way more dangerous than simply filling up your car.
It can be dangerous, but just being a good conscious alert driver really helps.
The hundreds of litres of volatile cargo mean it's essential Bradley follows stringent safety procedures. A mistake while loading or unloading the tank could result in a serious explosion, so he takes no chances. The metal bodywork can generate sparks from static electricity. So first a cord is attached to ground the trailer and also activate the overflow protection probes at the top of each compartment. To cope with the threat of highly flammable vapors escaping, a second pipe, known as the vapor recovery pipe, siphons off any leaks, which might otherwise escape into the atmosphere. Only once these are in place can Bradley connect the fuel lines and begin to pump. Every day, over 4 million litres of petrol are safely transported to local gas stations from this terminal alone. Pumped into the service station's huge reservoir, the petrol is finally ready for use. So you can at least find solace in the extraordinary work it's taken to keep your wheels turning the next time you fill up your car and grimace at the cost of your fuel. But until your futuristic flower-powered flying car comes along, you just have to grin and bear it. Coming up, how...
Okay.
How's it go? Es que se ve bien raro.
Okay. So what do you think about that video?
¿Qué piensas del video?
Couple of notes. That one is, so we were talking about the oil in Texas, that's right. And basically they start extracting oil 1900s, that's right? They say 1901, I recall well. 1901. Yep. And so far, they have been extracted 16 billion barrels, that's right? How many left? 10.
Sí, how many left?
So they have a source of 26 billion. So if we do a simple math, this is equal to 40% left. Okay? And that's gone. Because in order to have 26 billion, how many years happen? That's what they have to say. So those numbers are really, really, the video itself is from somebody that works in that industry. So it creates some controversy because it's coming from the people that, works in there, which is good to hear their perspectives about it. But just hearing that Texas only have left 40%. So these 16 billions already were gone in about 120 years, sort of. So maybe another 100 years.
Okay.
In Texas is not going to be the powerful state about oil. So they have to figure it out in 100 years what they are going to do, because oil is going to be gone. When it's gone, it's gone. Actually, they have to extract this oil with drills about 2 miles down. That's right, 2 miles. They have to drill 2 miles into the ground in order to extract the oil. So that's kind of my message, you know, at the beginning on this, that it was clear, you know, that this is not a renewable energy. It's not a infinite energy. It's going to be gone, and it's coming up. Yep.
Also, what other views that the net competition
So it's going to be expanded faster. Yeah, it's going to be expanded faster. Yeah, because we are going to have more population. Yeah, thank you. There you go. Yeah, because this is driven by population too, by the market, and the industry, and the population. Absolutely, yeah.
I saw a video in that they said I don't know,
50 years, 10 million, 10 billions, 10 billion, yeah.
It's not like linear, it's exponential, so it's like double it, like so.
It's exponential. It's not linear. It is exponential. The graph, the population graph is exponential, not linear. Yeah, you're right. And you can see it. Maybe you are too young, but I remember back, you know, when I was a child, I couldn't see many cars, even in my country. But now that I travel back to my country, not only cars, motorcycles, and any other thing, you know, people is moving through any kind of vehicle powered by gasoline, basically. So yeah, there is more usage. There's more people and even more usage on these resources. So that's a great point. So maybe these 10 billion barrels, you know, left in the ground, they're going to last less than 100 years. And now, absolutely, yeah. The what? 1920s, yeah. About that. It was zero, yeah. But it, you know, they envisioned that. So that's the power of humanity too, you know. So you cannot be just saying bad things about technology, but that's the power of humanity. You know, back in the time, they figured that there was, you know, that need to move forward. So in oil was you know, was the thing. And they figured all the technology, the network. Then through the videos, it's great to see how they pumping up the oil, and then they transfer to the network, to the refinery. And then after they refine the oil, it moves to another network, you know, the drivers and so on, the pump stations, and then the users. So everything is set up for that. But those things takes a lot of energy, resources, policy, and many other things in order to have, you know, set up the whole market for it. It took many years in order to have those things. Okay. Any other comments about the video? Any other remarks? You're okay? What else?
Professor.
Oh, and the amount of energy. They talk about, you know, when they separate crude, it has to be by heat. So you have to have energy in order to have to refine oil, basically. But they didn't talk about how much energy is that. So it will be good to have how efficient are they. That will be a good question. You know, how efficient is a refinery to produce this amount of energy? How much input you have to remember? And again, let me see if we can clean this over here a little bit. When we have let's say this box is any kind of system. So a system has some inputs and also has some outputs. Any kind of system. But here in the system, we represent changes as a delta. So you have changes, you have transformations, you have process changes, processes, and so on. So in order to move the system, you need some energy input, and then you're going to have some energy output too. But these outputs will be real work or dissipation of energy, like a heat, okay? So that's when you have to analyze the system, you can figure out the efficiency. But, you know, as a general way to understand energy systems or any kind of systems in this way. So these systems and changes are the processes that, like a refinery. So what is the chemistry and so on in order to separate the crude. So that's the process. In order to do that, you need some heat. In order to do that, you need some chemicals too that you have to add it in order to have your outputs. And in this case, were gasoline and so on. But other outputs could be the heat used in the refinery in order to separate the crude as well. Okay? Let's see what else we have here. Okay, let's gonna continue. Are you seeing this? You seeing the screen, Ensenada?
Yeah. Yes, we are.
Okay. So let's gonna move forward on the presentation, and now let's gonna talk about more in general about technology and those impacts about it. So this graph on the right show us the primary energy consumption by source and sector in United States in 2017. So on the left, right, so the energy consumption from petroleum accounts 30% of the whole thing. Natural gas was 29%, coal was 14%, renewable energy was only 11%, and nuclear energy was 9%, sorry. So again, last year, the biggest portion of energy source were no renewable energy. That accounts about 80% of that, the whole mix of energy in the United States. And how we use that energy? Transportation is the biggest player. It uses 29% of that energy. Industrial uses 22%. Residential and commercial, 11%. Electric power, 38%. So I'm sorry, electric power is the largest player, following by transportation. So between electric power and transportation, we pretty much have 78%, 67% of the energy usage in the United States. And also we can see that in every of these sources, in every of these sources, energy is used in the different sectors through transportation, industrial, and electrical power. So there is a mix of things, you know, among the uses in the United States. And using data from the energy, what's it called, the EIA. Yeah. So let me show you that, because let's see.
Excuse me, Jairo.
Yeah.
I wonder if you can use the whole screen.
Give me a second.
Thank you.
You share. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay, so this website is really cool. It's the U.S. Energy Information Administration. So I'm using a lot of information from this website. So you, at the end of the class, there's going to be a homework, and the ones that wants to deal with California. So I have a couple of questions there. So you can refer to this website. Okay, it's the U.S. Energy Information Administration. So it has really, really cool information, and it's you know, it's a website that is reliable and truthful. So, for example, if you click on this one, you can see today in energy, total per capita energy consumption on US average was 301 British thermal units. And you can see what are the states here that use most of that energy, okay, by different colors, from 176 all the way to almost 900 British thermal units, and so on. So it has pretty cool information. You can download that information, you can copy, you can read a lot of information from this one too. It has information from different years as well, and also by month. So it's pretty cool website that I hope that you will use in the future. Okay. Let me get out of this. Oh. Let me see the presentation. Now new share this one. Okay, so we are back to the presentation, okay? Okay, what else on this? About technology and resources. So the impact of non-renewable energy, we have a lot of negative impacts on non-renewable energy, especially on the environment. So as I say here, major byproducts are carbon dioxide and various residuals such as fly ash. So carbon dioxide and others are increasing the greenhouse gases effects on Earth because we are using a lot of non-renewable energy. So a lot of pollution is going up because the high usage of non-renewable energy. And this has been affecting the global climate as well, you know, for using heavy fossil fuel use. When we talk about coal, coal has been another source of energy that has been used a lot and is still using in the planet Earth. But one of the issues in using this one are the carbon dioxide emissions. So coal occurs in combination with sulfur in many places. So high sulfur coal, when burned, produces sulfur dioxide, which is the source of acid rain. So in this map on the right side of this slide, you can see that the major areas where the pH in the atmosphere in the rain is less than 5 is in the northeast part of the United States. In these areas is where we have more of the coal mines, okay? So it has a related effect on the atmosphere with the coal mines that we have here. So you can see numbers of pH about 4.2 up in the North Carolinas and in those states, New York and so on. So the northeast part of the United States. But it's not much, you know, towards the west of the United States, like in California and other places. Okay, so basically all the chemistry in the atmosphere has been changed by coal mines because the byproducts on using this kind of energy resources. So those byproducts like sulfurs and others have been changing the pH in the water. So when the pH in the rain change, that rain falls down into the ground. That water goes into the rivers and also to the lakes, and that water already is going to change the pH on the rivers and the lakes as well. So changes in pH affect the ecosystems as well. So lower pH makes things more difficult for the ecosystems, to grow up. And again, this is a system. So basically, anything that you have here in your system is going to impact other parts of the system, of the ecosystem as well. So it's so important to understand the impacts of any kind of technology into the environment as well. Okay. Nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is another type of energy that is being used, not much as other energies, but it's there. In the previous slide, I showed you that it's about 8% of the mix of energy that we have in the United States, and pretty much 10% in the whole world. So basically, this energy is about atoms. So the energy in the bonds within the nucleus may be released through nuclear fission or nuclear fusion reactions. So basically, in an atom structure, you have protons that are the positive ones, you have electrons that are the negative charged atoms, and you have neutrons. All these three combine the nucleus. So on nuclear energy, you basically release that energy as a nuclear fusion where atoms are combined or fused together to form a large atom. So this technology, it may be clean, but it creates some big risks if things that don't happen well in that kind of technology. So December last year, there were 99 operating nuclear reactors at 61 nuclear power plants in the United States. There is one in Arizona that is the largest nuclear power plant in the United States with 3 reactors and a total electricity generating capacity of about 4,000 megawatts. So unlike fossil fuel fire power plants, nuclear reactors do not produce air pollution or carbon dioxide while operating. But in order to create this kind of plant, yeah, you use carbon dioxide related products too. So, but when you are operating, you don't use those byproducts and so on. But there are environmental concerns about nuclear plants, like what happened with the radioactive wastes, such as mill tailings and reactor fuels that are wasted, from these ones. But I'm not an expert on nuclear energy, but just reviewing, some information, it seems to be that these wastes, they have a relative low level of radioactivity compared, to the source of the nuclear energy. But still, there is a lot of regulations on this in order to, to protect the environment, to protect the humankind by the government. Well, I was going to talk briefly about solar energy. So solar energy has been, since the beginning of the entire system being placed. So there are different ways to understand solar energy. One of the things is we can separate, we can say that we have solar energy as a thermal collection or photon collection. So in thermal collection, we have active and passive collection. So the active collection is where more energy is obtained by solar collectors that follow the sun's movement. And the passive collection is low energy collection in home, businesses, and in industry. The photon collection is basically chemically collection of photons in biomass. So basically the wood and fossil fuels. This photon collection is made by photovoltaic cells that collect photons into, convert that photons into electricity. There are some numbers here that I find out that are really relevant for us that say that the total sunshine entering to our atmosphere every year is equivalent to 500 million barrels of oil or 8 billion metric tons of coal. So that's on yearly basis. So one of the main problems on solar energy are the high levels of use come from the fact that it is so diffuse and spread out. It has to be collected over large areas. And that's one of the issues that we have, especially here in Imperial Valley, because some of the agricultural areas have been converted to solar panels. So it requires many acres in order to reduce this amount of energy. So you have to pull out prime agricultural land to have solar panels in order to produce that energy. So it requires, a lot of area. That's one of the things. Also, technology is even better these days, but the whole network and the policy and so on has not increased, so that the solar energy is more usage these days. Still, is behind. But the numbers that I showed you before, only about 20% at most is renewable energy in the United States. So we are really behind, on those ones. So wind energy is another way to have energy for us. Nothing new. So basically, and again, the wind represents, in this case, is an example of kinetic energy. So it's an energy that moves around. So so wind energy, we have examples here in our region, in California, and also in Baja California, about wind turbines, that produce energy and then generates and converts that to electricity. So let's gonna see this video that show you how does electricity get to our homes, okay? And how is the system in place in order to have that kind of electricity coming to our homes.
Hi, my name is Leland Nunez, and here at SDG&E, we know electricity is part of your everyday life. It's second nature just to walk into a room and turn on the lights using a switch. We charge our favorite devices, or we keep our food nice and fresh using a fridge that uses electricity. But how does this electricity make its way to your home, and where does it come from? Here's a simple little breakdown to find all that out. Let's check it out. Power starts with generation. We begin this process at a power plant using thermal, nuclear, or hydroelectric methods. These methods all spin a turbine that turns the generator. These generators create power by converting the mechanical energy of a turbine into the electrical energy of the generator. Power is sent to an electric substation. These substations contain many types of equipment. One of the most important is the transformer. These transformers perform the voltage induction. They use voltage-induced coils to raise or lower the voltage as required. These transformers convert the lower power plant voltage into extremely high voltage. This high voltage can then be carried long distances with minimal losses. These high voltages can be upwards of 500,000 volts and require some highly insulated lines. This is where the transmission grid comes into play. These specialized lines transport massive amounts of high voltage power to cities and towns all over the nation. Transmission power lines link the nation together through electricity. Once the power has traveled to your city, it enters another substation. The power goes through another substation transformer to bring the voltage all the way down to the distribution level. A standard voltage for distribution power lines in San Diego is about 12,000 volts. Distribution lines are the most common type of power line and can be found on nearly every street that is supplied by power. These distribution lines bring the power to your neighborhood where it undergoes its final voltage drop. This distribution transformer brings the voltage down to usable household levels and travels down your service wire and into your home through your meter panel. And there you have it, power at your fingertips.
Okay. Okay, that was a short video. was going to discuss briefly about this. Share screen. I'm sorry, but I always have to share the screen every time that I move away from it. So can you see the screen, Ensenada?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so that was a short video about how does electricity get into our homes. So that was maybe we are more familiar with that because we live in cities. So we went to the power plant on it. Then that's what we create power. We convert mechanical energy into electrical energy. Then there are these kind of transformers that help us, to elevate the voltage or to lower the voltage on this energy. Then we have the transmission towers and so on. Then we have substations in our cities. And then we have a red or network of distributions. Then we have more transformers, that even can raise or lower the voltage as needed on that particular region. And then we can have energy in our houses. Okay, so, and again, this is a standard system that we use nowadays in our communities in order to get electricity in our houses. So that was a brief video about this. Let's see. Okay, so now I talk a lot about non-renewable energy. Briefly, we talk about non-renewable energy as well. I show you different kind of systems and how that works and how is the network in place. So there is this video that talk about why not to think different. We are gonna have in place, and we are gonna move forward non-renewable energy. We have to think different in order to have a different network and a different setup to have this new renewable energy, not new, but the renewable energy moving forward, and get more renewable energy than fossil fuel energy. So this video is pretty interesting because it gave us some ideas, at least from an individual that can share, that knowledge with us. So let's gonna see this video. And then we can discuss about it. Sure.
Let's be honest, you operate in pretty rare air. You're charting your own course, reaching new heights.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm going to talk about energy, specifically sustainable energy. Energy kind of matters a lot for everything we do in our daily lives. It fueled the transportation you use to get here. It powers your computers. It's actually what fires up your cell phones. The challenge is, what would we do here if we didn't have lights in this room? We would be able to do nothing. We are seriously getting the energy equation wrong. We're getting it very wrong. And we need to get it right. We need to get it very right given the challenges we face. Now, what do I mean when I say sustainable energy? For some, sustainable energy is all about climate change. For others, sustainable energy is all about how do I get access to the energy I need for the development of my country. Let's think about the climate angle. Just recently, 34 mayors of communities around Miami, Florida, gathered together to talk about the risks that they face with rising seas caused by climate change. There are 2.4 million people in those communities who live within a few feet of high tide. They estimate that there's $65 billion of property that's at risk of flooding in the next 15 years, not 2100, in the next 15 years. Now, there are coastal communities and islands around the globe who face precisely that same risk. Now, there was an agreement reached in Paris on climate goals and objectives. We all know that. What you may not know is that 80% of the world's energy mix today is fossil-based. And under a climate change scenario that meets a 2-degree target, by 2050, fossil will still be at least 40% of the energy mix. The system that we have today is going to persist into the future. And whether we like it or not, fossil energy is going to be a significant share of that. We are not going to change this system unless we're prepared to fundamentally rethink it. But let's look over at the development side of the equation. There are 1.3 billion people in the world who do not have access to modern energy services today. Another billion have access, but it's not very good quality access. Their priority is not climate change. And we have to recognize that there are a lot of individuals and countries who depend on the fossil industry for their welfare, for their livelihood. Now, the United Nations agreed to a set of 17 Sustainable Development Goals. These cover health, education, pollution. Sustainable Goal number 7 is all about energy. But I would argue that it's underpinning attainment of all of the development goals. The Zika virus, one of the recommendations for how to deal with it is to avoid mosquito bites by staying inside in air-conditioned spaces. And the minute you're talking air conditioning, you're talking energy. So I would describe energy as the golden thread through all of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, the challenge we have is how do we integrate these two perspectives? How are we going to achieve those goals? Energy is at the heart of the matter. My proposition to you is that we need to move beyond the engineering culture that brought us to today, where energy is a series of commodities, and we've got to move to a services culture that will carry us into the future. Please note that I didn't say away from the engineering culture. I did say beyond the engineering culture. That's an important distinction for any engineers who are in the audience. Now, the telecoms industry is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Before, we had a monopoly system where they would provide communication services through fixed landlines. Suddenly, we break up the monopolies and a lot of things change, and today we have ICT, information and communications technology, and it integrates audio-visual, it integrates communications, it integrates all of the data management that we might want. Well, it's time for energy to join that party. But it's up to the regulators and the policymakers to print those invitations. Because right now it's not happening fast enough. Now, my father used to tell me when he was a young man in Alabama that his family did not have running water or electricity in their house. Wind the tape forward one generation to me, and you find my own kids on the couch texting their friends or ordering pizza on a smartphone app. Certainly not doing their chores. If I think about the progress that has been made in 1 century, I, for one, remain absolutely convinced that we can meet the challenges of climate change and sustainable development in an integrated way. Now, let me explore a bit with you that services concept. And I'm going to use the power industry, the electricity industry, as an example. But the thinking that I'm going to use can apply to all of the energy types. To talk about the energy value chain, and that's what it's called, you have at the beginning is the generation of electricity. It can be from a fossil power plant, a nuclear power plant, or from renewables. It's then transmitted over networks or distribution systems, repackaged, and then finally used by customers at the end. What I'm proposing is that there's a set of services that overlay that and they connect all of the different pieces in the chain. So you have quality of life, quality of service, and flexibility. And I will talk about each of those in turn. Let's start about quality of life. You and I are not consuming electricity right now. We are consuming lighting, some, heating, and in warmer climates, it'll be cooling. We use energy all the time in our daily lives. But at the end of the month, we're going to pay a bill for the BTUs we've burned or for the kilowatt hours that we've used. What they're selling me and what I'm buying are not the same thing. It's in the utility's interest to sell me more BTUs or more kilowatt hours because that's how they make their money. They are not set up to provide energy services. That's what happened to the telecoms. They had to figure out how to provide services, and that's a perfect comparison. The result of that is I am a utility end user, whereas I need to become the customer of an energy services provider. And that's the critical relationship change that I think we need to make. The result of that will be that customers will get better quality of life and they'll get reduced costs, reduced prices. Even more, we'll stop using so much energy unnecessarily. Now, the health industry is going through a very similar introspection right now. How can we provide health to the population without necessarily providing more antibiotics? Is that possible? In fact, that's a lesson that most industries should learn. How can I give value without necessarily providing volume? So value instead of volume. So let me come back to the services concept of it. Give me a menu of options with the prices that are attached. Do I want 18 degrees or do I want 22 degrees centigrade in my house? Does this lighting system actually work for me? If we are able to make that kind of a shift, then we're going to unleash a wave of investments by energy service providers who've got the financing capability, they've got the technological understanding, and they've got a stable of trustworthy contractors who can make all of this thing happen. Then I'll have more efficient heating, cooling, and lighting systems. I'll have some kind of smart appliances who are able to manage their own consumption, possibly that of the entire household. I'll even get investments in insulation. If we make that kind of a shift, the result is going to be improved energy efficiency, reduced costs, a lower environmental footprint, and man, talk about innovation. It will happen. Let me move now to the second aspect of service that I'm talking about. This is where I say quality of service. We've all been in circumstances where lights start flickering. You might have a local blackout or a whole regional blackout. That's called reliability. Reliability is not a constant around the world. If you've got 1 hour in 8 on your network, that's not reliability. If I've got a situation where there's pulses or collapses in the voltage on the system, that's not reliability. Now, there are a lot of technical terms for reliability. Let's call it quality of service. If I call up the utility and I've got a problem, how long will it take them to answer with a competent human being on the other end of the line? How quickly will they get a service crew out to repair a power line that might have need repair? I can list out a whole series of commercial and technical measures of quality of service. And what I propose here is that we change how companies are rewarded. Instead of cost plus, they are either rewarded or penalized for the quality of service that they offer. The result will be exactly what I've talked about before: better performance, lower cost, and a reduced environmental footprint. The third area I would like to talk about is flexibility. As you all know, there's been enormous investments in renewables over the last years. This has been supported by subsidies because there's a view that there isn't a real price on carbon, or because we have to level the playing field with fossil industry. Whatever the reason, today the challenge is, if I'm looking forward, how am I going to reduce the carbon intensity of the energy sector in an economically rational way? We want to get a system where we're bringing on the renewables and we're bringing on other low carbon solutions, but it has to work. If you've got renewables, they're going to be variable if they're wind or solar. You still have the variability on the demand side. With all of that tension that you're putting into the system, we need to value flexibility. We need to have power generators and customers who can stop and start and provide the services that an integrated system requires if we want this game to work properly. So let me put that in technical terms. We need to have properly structured balancing markets that value and encourage investments in flexible units. And those balancing markets need to be on an energy market boundary basis, not on the political boundaries that are drawn on a map. So I would like to conclude by saying, as I said at the outset, the energy equation today is not working. If we want to meet the goals of climate change and sustainable development, we're going to have to rethink the energy system. If we start by thinking of energy as a series of services instead of a series of commodities, we will be able to do it. We will be able to improve the system's efficiency. We will be able to reduce the intensity, the carbon intensity of the system, and we'll be able to improve its accessibility globally. When I think of the progress that has been made since a child in Alabama studied by candlelight, I am convinced that this can be done, but we've got to get out of our seats and make it happen. Thank you very much.
Okay. Just going to discuss briefly that video. Make it back. Trying to put back the screen. So give me 1 second, okay? Share screen. Okay. Can you see the screen, Ensenada?
Yes, we do.
Okay. It was a good video. I believe so. It was some thoughts, about how to rethinking and the way that we use energy, our networks, and so on. Maybe many things that we don't understand, but one of the things that he said, in his presentation is why we are doing this rethinking is because our climate change is already happening. It's affecting our lives. Not just a few are being affected by climate change, but millions of people are going to be affected, are being affected right now. The ecosystems are being affected, by climate change. But the other thing, is the access to energy to the developing world as well. So when we talk about in other regions about climate change with people with other needs about food, water, energy, do you care about climate change? I don't care about climate change. If I have to, even if I have other needs to supply, if I have other needs to meet, I don't care about climate change. So how are you going to talk about climate change to people that is, starving by food? It's difficult to understand those things. So, but he pointed out that energy should be the central part of this, that many goals that we have as a human beings, the United Nations show up like 7 different goals that we have to pursue towards the future. and one of those were energy. And this speaker say it's going to pull up energy as the central focus, because energy is going to be impacting the other goals, like health, economy, pollution, business, and other things. So that was pretty thoughtful ideas. And the other thing is having these discussions with people like you in a college, in a university, that we have different backgrounds, because at the end of the day, we are going to have regulators and policymakers. And the regulators and policymakers that maybe today's we have, they don't understand truly our needs, or they don't understand truly the energy sector. Okay? So that's what we have to educate ourselves as well. We have to educate the public too on how to understand energy, so that when we make decisions, we have a better perspective of the impact of doing those policies and so on. So that's kind of my my message from that video. There is a group discussion. It's going to do this maybe for 5 to 10 minutes. I want to bring these questions to everyone here. So we have 4 questions. How do our individual energy choices affect the global energy problem? The second question is, how would your life be different if the amount of energy available for use is drastically reduced? Another question is our supply of energy infinite or finite? What are some choices you can make that help alleviate the energy problem? Why not just maybe by groups? So we have 4 questions. Maybe we have 4 groups. So every group tackles each of these questions. And then we can, we can talk briefly about the answer of those. So we have here 3, 5, 9 people. So maybe 3 groups of 3 individuals. So one group can tackle the first question, and the other groups can tackle the other ones. And maybe in Ensenada can work in one of these questions.
Yes, we can.
Which one do you want? What is the easiest for you?
The second one?
The second one?
Yes.
Okay. So who's going to do the first one?
Okay.
Here. So take this opportunity to start knowing each other, because on your term project, you have to work as a team. So take this brief opportunity to look at other individuals that maybe you want to work on your term project. The homework is going to be the same. The homework is going to be on groups, because I want from you guys to meet each other, and try to look at your partner, before that you select truly the guys that you want to work on your term project. Okay. So take this opportunity to mingle, and to know other classmates. So you want to do it by your own? Select 3 groups. So here we have, maybe in this table we can have 3 people. Who wants to move here to this table? Who wants 3 students to move here? And one of you have to move, okay? One of you have to move over table number 3. So you're going to tackle question number 3. And you tackle question number 1. You number 1 and you number 4. Okay, the bottom. You do the first one. And you move number 2, please. You are going to work on number 4. Okay? So I want an answer for that group, okay? Okay, Ensenada, are you working with question number 2?
Yes, we are in the process.
Okay. part of the system. Este es un parte del sistema. So there's going to be an effect to the system as an individual. Just maybe one example. You can craft one idea. When I do this, affect this. One second. Sí. Voy a empezar un ejemplo más. Cuando ustedes escogieron que tipo de ejemplo, afectar la energía actual. Problema de energía actual. This may be just one example. Briefly. Maybe when you choose to drive a car versus drive a bicycle. Makes sense? Okay. Ustedes están Just one example. I will be great. You? A ver si. ¿Cómo lo van a? I know. You ready? Are you ready? You ready? Yeah. Okay. Ensenada, are you ready? Because I'm gonna bring every group here at the podium so that they speak about the answer of each of those questions. So basically, you have to craft a short answer about your question, and your question was number 2, Ensenada. So group number, what is the so you guys tackle question number 1. You please come to the podium on just one person, and answer briefly about that question. How do our individual energy choices affect the global energy?
So we basically discussed that the choices that, as an example that we used were individual choices could be like us deciding to use our personal vehicle.
Yeah.
And we could opt for using like public transportation, because all of our individual choices, they lead to the creation of more greenhouse gases. So that's basically.
So you said that collective transportation
would probably
lower,
yeah.
Probably lower, or at least move more people at the same time. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Ensenada, can you speak about question number 2? How will your life be different if the amount of energy available for use is drastically reduced? Just give me one example.
Okay, they are nearly ready, so here we go.
We think that.
Can you speak? Can you get closer to the mic and speak louder?
I think that, well, we think that we change our lifestyle in many ways. One way can be the transportation of the people, and also the transportation of our foods, because we live in a city that is in the desert. So we don't make a lot of foods. So that could be a problem for us.
So transportation and food are the key elements in order to if you reduce those drastically, are going to affect, you know, the energy available.
Yes.
But it has to be a balance on transportation and food on it. Okay, that's okay. Question number 3. You ladies, is our supply of energy infinite or finite? Will you please come up to the podium and speak about it? Thank you.
Okay, so our supply of energy, well, the supply for itself, we think it's infinite because we have renewables. So if we use them, we have infinite supply of energy. It just depends if we use that one or not renewables like oil, coal, and stuff. So in that case, it's finite.
Okay, thank you. Number 4, you guys, what are some choices you can make that help alleviate the energy problem? What choice? Don't be afraid, guys. Just come on here, one of you guys, and just give me your thought briefly. Come on, guys. Don't be ashamed. I know that is tough. Which one? Which one, guys? Come on, guys. Don't be afraid.
Maybe I can speak Spanish.
Sure, yeah. Go ahead, go ahead. Go ahead, man, because we have to get this done. Okay, dale.
Una de las ideas que teníamos es como unas pláticas en la universidad y pues hablar sobre reducir los consumos de energía en las propias casas. Tal vez no sea como aquí en Mexicali que usa mucho la refrigeración, pues tener ciertos horarios para reducir el consumo de energía y así también reducir el consumo de energía en la ciudad para que no se haga tanto gasto.
Yeah. Okay. So they were planning to do like educational workshops to the people. So try to teach them how to make options or choices that reduce energy in their houses, basically.
Kind of like awareness.
Like awareness. Thank you. Yeah, like awareness workshop. Yeah, about energy. That was a good idea. Sure. Yeah, education is key on this. So yeah, that's a great answer. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, I guess we have to move forward. That was a good. Let's gonna get back to the term project. Okay. So remember, this is required for all the students attending this class. This is an engineering project, and it's meant to reinforce good education design elements. So those design elements are application of knowledge, problem definition and solving, ethics, judgment and decision making, and teamwork. Okay, so today we practice teamwork here. But among these elements, ethics is something that we are promoting a lot these days in education. Because there has been a lot of bad behavior, you know, a lot of knowledge has been come out to our lives. We understand many things, but when we get to the point that make decisions and put things in perspective, we don't have a good judgment on those things. So as professionals in our respective lives, we have to have good standard ethics on this one. So that's why ethics is one of the key elements on any kind of design. And that's something that you have to practice on this project. And again, this project is focused on developing a sustainable energy project for your university campus. So for the guys in Ensenada, they have to choose an energy project for your campus there. For the ones here, you either choose one for the San Diego State Imperial Valley campus or the UABC in Mexicali, okay? So you can, you know, because nowadays we only have one student from San Diego State University. I hope that others join you, either from Mexicali or the one from Ensenada. I don't know, because in Ensenada only we have one student. So we have to figure it out, because I really want for you to work in every of the campuses and work as a group, okay? And not to work with your close friend. Try to challenge yourself. That's what today you select or pick up, some of your friends, others you don't know each other, but now start building, some confidence about working as a team. So the term project, you have to prepare a 2-page proposal that is due September 25th, so in 4 weeks. It's a 2-page proposal. In this proposal, I need to know who is going to work in that team, the name of the project, and the background. What is the need to do this project in your respective campus, and give you some brief statements about the state of the problem. Okay? The project description, what is the kind of proposed solution that you want to tackle on this, description of your methods, and the timeline. Okay? All this is due on September 25th, 2 pages on this one. Then there are going to be progress reports pretty much every month on October 30th and November 20th. And this should include your work to date, as well as any problems you are encountering with your project. And here there is a website that shows you this website. In this website that I found out, what time is it? It's 3:50. Oh my God. Okay, in this website, you can find out energy projects made by students like you. Okay? Like this solar options project. So you see a proposal, because it's pretty much what I'm asking you is a proposal. This one was educational solar lighting systems around campus. So there was an introduction, a background, what is the need of that, and what they are proposing, okay? So this is kind of an example of what I'm expecting from you at the end of the project. For the term project that is due, the 2 pages due September 25th, I just need the 2 pages about the background. So you have to look at your campuses. What are the needs of any kind of energy projects at your campus, okay? And what is going to be your proposed project on it, okay? Your teams and so on. Let me go through the final thing today that I want to discuss with you guys is the homework. Your screen sharing is also, see, share screen, okay. So the last thing that I want to discuss with you guys today is the homework. So we have this homework. I have copies here for you guys. You see, this homework is due next week, okay? And my first goal is that you know other students, potential students that you want to work on your term project, okay? So up to 3 people, okay? So it could be just one if you want, but I encourage you to work with somebody else, 2 or 3, all right? I want from you to write up 2 pages, including tables and features and references of the past, present, or future of the energy systems in Baja California or California, okay? These 2 websites are websites from here, from California, and from the United States, okay? So you either chose to talk about the past of the energy systems in Baja California, yes, it's fine. Just add it, maybe a table or figure and talk about those things. Give me the reference about it, okay? You can talk about the present as well, or the future, or you can talk about the 3 if you want, okay? Kind of the same thing that I did with you, today. Just give you that background. Any questions about that question? Okay, on number 2, I want from you to check how many power plants, hydroelectric, coal, wind, solar, geothermal, or nuclear, are either in Mexicali, Ensenada, Tijuana, or Imperial County. You choose. You choose that city or region that you want to work with. I just want pictures and general information. And number 3, in Google Maps, estimate the number of gas stations and the number of parks in your community. What do you think about the difference between gas stations and parks, green vegetation, CO2 removal, those kind of things. Okay, this is due Tuesday next week, right? So choose whoever you want to work with. Okay. Oh yeah, yeah. You can email me. Yeah, you can email me or print out your findings, but it's better to email me if you want. Okay. My email address is in the syllabus. All right. That's good. Thank you so much. See you next week. All right.
Thank you. See you next week.
See you. Thank you.